the only thing, or rather the main thing that I've cared about with this whole Twitter situation has been the reaction from the people that particularly are in Twitter, as in like it internally. So the folks that are already working there. But also the big thing of mine was just the overall, let's say, reaction. Because again, it's not about who you think Elon Musk is or what you think that he is. You individually, as a person that may not care, or maybe you don't trust Elon, that's not relevant at all. There is a certain perception that a lot of powerful people, or the people that are in power, let's say that, and I don't want to say powerful people because individually a lot of them are losers, but there's a certain perception that they have of Elon, and they recognize that it is a threat. Now, I think a lot of people that, let's say, don't really understand culture like that, they will have a more mundane kind of milquetoast take on this whole entire situation. Like, oh, who cares? I'm better than everybody. And that's why I've argued that non-leftists have lost culturally, because they don't keep their hand on any sort of this pulse type of situation. As I've said in talking about this subject matter and many others, the left really all they have, because they don't have the ideas on this side, all they have is perceived legitimacy. So what happens is that they told on themselves before, but with this given scenario, what's going on with Twitter, really what you're getting is a bunch of people that are just, they understand what the tactic was. They've been able to control kind of the flow of information, or not even that. Less about controlling the flow of information. They can't necessarily control that, but they control of what is perceived as legitimate information. As in, like, what's the correct position on this given topic? And through various ways of moderation of like these social media sites, Twitter in particular, they have been able to basically control the conversation, you know? So they know that if they lose that, that is a threat to their power. That's all this is about right now. It's a threat to their power. Looking at this as Blaze, we're going to go through some of these. Like, just as we read through some of these Twitter posts, as they have documented, Blaze, you're going to be like, what in the fuck? Let's read some of these. Washington Post columnist Max Boot, you've heard this. He says, I am frightened by the impact on society and politics if Elon acquires Twitter. He seems to believe on social media anything goes. For democracy to survive, we need more moderation, not less. Which isn't necessarily incorrect, that latter half. This is why democracy is bad. This is a hilarious thing because, you know, he's like, Elon's this all big pro-democracy guy, and the other side claims to be pro-democracy when democracy is dog shit, either way that it goes. But he's more correct than what Elon is on that particular subject, in that, of course, for it to survive, you need some level of controlling the information that people see as legitimate. That's how dog shit that it certainly is. So he's right on that. But again, that's what this is about. And that's what I need people to understand, that this is about folks that know that they have been able to control the like what is perceived as legitimate information, and their power, that it becomes under threat. Looking at this, journalist Jeff Jarvis says, today on Twitter feels like the last evening of the Berlin nightclub at Twilight in Weimar, Germany. Robert Reich, who pretends, let's say this, he pretends like he understands economics. He says, I hate to break it to the so-called defenders of capitalism out there, but oligarchy isn't good for markets or freedom. You don't give a shit about markets or freedom. It's one step removed from feudalism. We are watching a hostile takeover of Twitter by the richest man in the world who regularly tries to silence critics. What? This is what oligarchy looks like. Okay, so it's not a level of oligarchy when the handlers control and basically are extensions of the state when it comes to social media. I think what happened particularly with COVID, that lets you know that these companies aren't actually private per se. When they start doing the bidding of the government, It's effectively more fascism than anything. But when they start doing the bidding of the government, you can't sit up here and blame that on markets by any means. So what they look at it as, well, if it is put more so back in private hands, they're going to claim the feudalism card and all of that. But really all this shit is about is, again, information being controlled. So it's okay if they have control of it, but if they think that their enemy has control of it, then it's a problem. Journalist, Anand, I'm not going to even try to pronounce this guy's last name. Elon Musk is why to abolish billionaires. What? Asking them to chip in their fair share isn't enough. Regulating them isn't enough. When people are allowed to acquire this much concentrated influence, they will inevitably spread economic power into every other form of power. He's purchasing a fucking website, man. What? Correspondent Ellie Mistel with the says, I'm not really worried about the racist white man buying the dumb platform, because all the racist white man wants to do with it is make it easier for his friends to be racist. That's how these guys see Nazis, like all like in places that they're not, like they're in their head, right? It's a dragon to slay. And it's just insane watching them when something has nothing to do with them. They have to apply it to try to like authorize their actions, right? It's like, all right, well, we want this to be justified, therefore Nazis and racists, which like they already are all the time, and I make fun of them and they block me, so whatever. Besides, if they make it too bad, black people will just leave to some other platform owned by white people who have access to venture capital, and we will make the culture there, and whites will follow us because racists are boring, unimaginable. I don't even know what the hell that person's going on about. CEO Christopher Boozy says this game Elon Musk is playing on Twitter is dangerous. Twitter isn't just another social media website, and Elon clearly recognizes that. No. See, this is the thing. You may be correct in the sense that it has its level of influence. It doesn't have nearly as much influence as I think a lot of people think that it does. However, it is playing the cultural game. So, yeah, that certainly is true. However, look at these people. These people did not have a problem when it was them being able to control that. This is all about being able to, this is what they're afraid of. Simple as this. Elon Musk, let's say he gets hold of Twitter. He buys it. Rules change on moderation, saying that, okay, well, you can say virtually whatever the fuck you want as long as it's not anything particularly egregious. Like, of course, they won't allow, your run-of-the-mill general bad things. You can't be advocating violent crimes and all of that. But for the most part, y'all can have open dialogue about whatever. Now, I think a lot of people would prefer that, okay? Certainly folks on our side. But they don't want that because, again, how can you control entire narratives if that's what happens, right? As I said in my previous video on this topic, I think the whole COVID thing changes in the event that the social media websites weren't like either booting information off when people tried, or rather booting people off of their platforms when they were trying to give this information that was alternative to CDC or WHO. If they were allowed to say that, or they wouldn't having banners saying, well, this is misleading, in the event that it was anything that the authoritarian left was saying or antithetical to what they were saying, I think this whole COVID situation goes different in America. I really do. It goes in a different way. They know that. So this is only about, well, we have been able to control the conversation in some way on this platform. Elon Musk is a threat to that. That's all this is. Political analyst says, Jared Yates says, I don't know, maybe a society where billionaires have enough money lying around to start space programs and control communication while people starve and ration their medicine isn't the best system. Again, this goes back to the economic illiteracy. They think, well, billionaires bad. The money is better suited to the government when the government spends trillions of dollars trying to fight poverty every year. And obviously there's still poor people running around. People's beef with a lot of billionaires is just envious. Most most, well, when it comes from the left, let's say that it's just envy. It's just, I don't like the fact that they have money and therefore they shouldn't have money, and therefore giving it to a government that's going to piss it away anyway. It's more suitable because they'd rather you not have it than it be spent on doing any sort of venture. Please know Elon Musk buying Twitter. Please know, says Sarah, who's a journalist writer. Elon Musk, a writer Dave Pale, Elon Musk is Donald Trump with money. Well, Donald Trump has money. If he owns Twitter, I'm out. A writer, Matthew Rosa. This is what I'd already talked to them. Says, like Hitler's big lie, talked about it, excuse me, says, like Hitler's big lie must be normalized, lest fascism return. Hilarious that the Twitter doing the bidding of governments is not, because they don't understand fascism to them is guy that I don't like doing the thing that I don't like. That's fascism, right? To them. Anybody that actually understands what fascism is knows that what Twitter does and has been doing for the last 2 years is more akin to fascism than people just being allowed to say whatever they say want to say on a platform, so as long as it's not egregious. Fascism, everything within the state, nothing without it. It's the merge of corporate and state. And Twitter had been doing the bidding of the governments regarding COVID over the last couple years, and that in itself is more akin to fascism than whatever the hell they think that it is. But they're too retarded to certainly understand that, and this is why these terms don't mean anything anymore, because they just use them just to be fucking using them. Educator Morton Rand says, here we go. Elon Musk targets Twitter, 41 billion cash take offer. This could mean the end of content moderation and the platform descending into disinformation. See, that's what it's about. And far right extremism, which they conflated to either. That's what it's about. And disinformation, remember, it's not disinformation. Disinformation to them is just information that contradicts us or that disagrees with us or that is, let's say, not confirming where our individual beliefs are. That's what it is. And that's what's most important to them. And there's a long list of these weirdos who are frightened by this. They're absolutely scared. They're freaking out solely because of the idea that there is a guy that would buy that. And again, this isn't to say that he's going to do that. They just don't like the idea that that could happen. That someone could get control of this company, put it in private hands, and then just say, look, which Twitter was back in the gap, was you could just say whatever you want, so as long as it's not anything specifically egregious. And they themselves don't want that to happen. They talk about content moderation. That's all this is. That's all this is. They want people to be punished that are opposite of them. And they had a lot of success in ramping up their moderation efforts over the last couple of years. And that's what freaks them out. It's not a difficult thing to understand. It's not. It ain't. It's. I will say this. The fact that the left understands that is why they have been able to win. Okay, that's it. It's that they understand that a lot of what they are able to weaponize isn't political per se. It's not things that are directly tied to politics, though connected in some way. It's not directly tied to it. They get control of things that people, high user bases, things that people care about, things that people acknowledge as legitimate. And then they use those to say, okay, we're going to flood you with information. And this information is going to be, of course, co-signing us while then demonizing our political enemies. And they understand that that's of influence, particularly with the younger generation. That's of some kind of influence. That's all that it is. And this is what the other side hadn't quite got a grasp of and understanding, because they think everything's politics. But the left understands that, it's the lagging indicator. We get the culture, we get the politics by default. And this is why they are so hell-bent on controlling stuff like Twitter. And if they don't have it, well, here you go. This is hilarious watching them melt down, though.
You just listened to a clip from my podcast, For Cannon's Sake, which is live throughout the week at 12 p.m. Central on youtube.com/YoungRipper59 and odyssey.com/@YoungRipper59. Be sure to check out my website, ericdjuly.com, so you can stay up to date with everything it is that I'm doing. You can also become a member and get access to a bunch of cool perks and exclusive content, which includes a social media hub where you can interact with myself and other members. It even has an app that you can get, which is now live in the Google and Apple stores.